Hey guys, how's it going? Comparing here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the basic stats in Diablo 3. Now, I call them basic, but they're actually the most complicated stats. They're the most non-intuitive stats. I'm talking about strength, int, dex, and, throw vitality in there. That one's not so hard, but the contrast is when you compare these to a stat like crit or like crit percent damage, you know exactly what crit does based on its name. But these stats actually have very complicated models to how they work. So as you probably already know, each one of these stats gives one certain class a damage benefit. So strength, one strength is 1% damage for a barb, one int is 1% damage for a wizard or a witch doctor, dex for a monk and a demon hunter. Now, so the offensive benefit only applies to one or two of the classes. However, the defensive benefit of all of these stats applies to all of them the same way. So how does it do that? For strength, one strength gives you one armor. And you have to keep in mind, you have armor already. So the gear that you're wearing, let's say you have like 1,000 armor from gear, you get 100 strength, your armor is 1,000 plus 100. The base armor is 1,100. And you can find out how much damage will be reduced by your armor based on the following formula. And you can see that the armor variable is on the top and the bottom of the equation, and the bottom part has a constant. So when you see a formula like this, it'll represent a graph that'll kind of trail off after a while, so there's going to be diminishing returns. The more armor you have, the less effective the next point will be. As far as how armor stacks is, when you have a certain amount of armor, let's say 1,000 armor, and you get a buff plus 20% to your armor, you'll have 1,200 armor. Pretty easy. One more thing to note about armor is, armor, unlike all the other games that I've seen, actually reduces all the damage flat out. It's not just melee. If you have a crap load of armor, if you have like 98% damage reduced from armor, that's damage. That's not melee damage. So if you hit with a firebolt, 98% reduction. No problem. Armors kick ass. Second stat is int. So the defensive value of int is that every 10 int will give you one resist point. So let's talk about that. You can actually get resist as a stat on your gear in addition to the resist given from your intellect. And the resist formula for damage reduction is as follows. Oh damn, isn't that pretty similar to armor? Yeah, it is. It's actually exactly the same. So what you got to take into account is when you simplify this formula for intellect, it's identical to the armor formula. And it's actually simpler to, for calculation purposes, you can consider that one resist, so if you have like one fire resist or one to resist, let's just say one to resist all, because that's going to be simpler. If you had one resist all in your gear, that would give you 10 intellect worth of defensive bonus. And you're probably wondering, why would I do so many resist formulas? It's just resist, that doesn't matter. Well, in Diablo 3, one of the resists, physical resist. Who saw that coming? You got the same formula for armor as you do with intellect. Not only that, the damage reduction applies to the same variables. It's all the magic damage and all the physical damage. For defensive purposes, intellect is exactly equal to strength if the base starting amount is the same. However, that is not the case. When you're wearing armor, you have a base armor value. When you have some intellect, you're not going to have that big of a base value. Like, your base intellect is like 100 or something. Your base armor, don't be surprised when you see like 10, 15k. So because of that, int and resist, specifically resist, per point right when it's starting out is going to be much more valuable than strength when it converts to armor for defensive purposes. One more thing to note is that how resist modifiers apply in this game. So if you play Diablo, Diablo 2, whatever other game, you see, plus 50% all resists. So you're like, okay, whatever, bro. I got 25% resist, plus 50%. I got 75. I'm capped. 75, cap resist. No, it does not work that way. When you have an item that gives you plus resist percent, what it will do is it will modify your resist. So it'll modify your effective intellect. So this is how I like to calculate it. Let's say I have 1,000 intellect, and let's say I have 100 resist all. So my effective intellect will be 1,000 plus 100 times 10, so it'll be 2,000. And let's say I had plus 50% all resist. Well, that would actually raise my effective intellect defense to 3,000. So then I would use this formula with an intellect value of 3,000 to calculate the damage reduction. Very interesting. As far as dexterity is concerned, dexterity gives you dodge. It doesn't give you dodge in such a nice way as strength gives you armor or intellect gives resist, but it gives it in a way of levels. So you can see the levels here. The first bracket is actually a very good return for your dexterity. So 10 dexterity gives you 1% dodge. And after that, it diminishes a lot, but it diminishes by bracket. So it's a little bit trickier to calculate. But we also notice that it does diminish. Just like strength diminishes, and just like intelligence diminishes with their defensive abilities, so does dexterity. The main difference is that the other dodge bonuses don't really multiply your existing base dodge as armor and resistance work. The way they work is they multiply with one another. So each dodge buff after your base dex will be essentially dodging the remainder of the attacks after the first check. And give you guys an example over there. And you're probably asking yourself, it's like, man, dodge doesn't seem so good. I mean, you can't really dodge that much cool stuff, can you? Truth is, you can. You can actually dodge spells. You can dodge practically everything in the game. You can dodge like AoE attacks. You can dodge like puddles of damage on the ground. It's awesome. The main difference that dodge doesn't do for you, it does not help you from getting one shot. Well, armor and resistance from intellect, they do help you from getting one shot. And my recommendation is you need to get some dodge. I think it'll help you mitigate a good bit of damage if you're a melee class. However, you really want to focus on your armor and resistances first, because you want to make sure you can take a couple hits before you add some RNG factors into damage mitigation. The final stat, vitality, simple, no problem. 1 vitality equals 10 HP. We've done the numbers, and it seems that it's a little low, so there's some chance that this value will get modified at higher levels, and again, we'll update you if that's what happens to be the case. So anyway, guys, keep this in mind. It's very important. Your primary stat on a class is your primary source of defense and offense. Not only that, but when you have enough of it, the other stats become really good because of diminishing effects at high numbers. So if you're a Barb, you got a crap load of strength, you got a crap load of armor, intellect is actually going to give you more defense than strength would. Who would have thought that? See you guys next time.